It's very good to follow Ramon, because that overview of the situation puts us now in stage 4, which is radically different to where our training has been conceptualized. I think in stage 4 and stage 5, which is what we have to train people for, should affect our very basic training procedures. And I'm going to tell you in 10 minutes or less how and why. Basically, my argument is that the notion of computer-assisted or aided translation, CAT, TAO, traducción asistida por ordenador, is wrong. Why is it wrong? Sorry if you're teaching that course, Ramon. Because I can't imagine, or I can't find, very many translation or interpreting processes that are not aided by computers. This is stage 4. Everything we're doing is aided by computers, and more especially internet connections, as Ramon pointed out. So what's the deal with CAT? It's for cats and dogs. All translation and a lot of interpreting is by definition conditioned by technologies. So I think if you get that in place, you start to question a lot of the models by which our training is organized. Here is a model. Professor Gambier will recognize it, at least. It's from the European Masters in Translation, and it's their proposed working model of translation competence. It's a fairly standard current model because it's componential. It has components, which you can see. To that extent, it's like the Piqué model developed at this great institution here. And my doubts concern not particularly the choice of these terms, but the conceptual geometry, the idea that, well, if you're a good translator, a professional translator, an expert, whatever you want to call it, you have to have skills there, and there. Fair enough. Nothing wrong with that. And I have nothing against putting translation service provision, which is pure Guadec, in the center. That's fine. Okay? What bothers me is I have no guarantee that these components are actually separate. And I have a deep suspicion that the technological component influences radically what is done in all other components. If you're translating, and I assume that in stage 5, we're going to be translating with statistics or database machine translation systems. I just assume that as the direction we're heading in. If you're translating with such systems, you're learning languages as you translate and as you interact with the technology. You're picking up your thematic knowledge quite radically from the proposals coming from the databases. You're learning about intercultural relations, and the very nature of our intercultural relations is being affected by those technologies. Information mining has no right to be separated from technology in the first place, and everything you do in relation to your clients is mediated by the same kinds of technologies. I can't see why technology should be a separate component. In fact, I can't see why, if you look at cognitive studies of actual translation processes, of what translators actually do when working with these technologies, I can't see why we have a componential model of competence at all. I think it's time we got back to basics to look at what translators are actually doing, at what skills they're lacking in, at what skills the market demands, and then working on those skills without assuming any kind of homogeneous competence model like this. I can go into that later if you're interested. I'm very interested in these models. Why am I interested? Well, if you've got a model like this, you can justify having, firstly, separate courses for each one, and then multiplying the courses so we can spend 4 and 5 years to train professional translators. The model justifies the kinds of training programs that we have in Spain, at least. Other countries don't follow that. They focus on master's level training. But the Spanish preference is for that use of confidentiality to justify long-term training programs for translators. And there you can have a separate course for technology, which is where you start to call them cats, and heresies like that. The model also influences, believe it or not, the architecture of the centers we work in. Here, I think, because we thought that translators had technology as a separate thing, we built these computer labs with lots of computers fixed. You still got them? Yeah? You don't need that. You don't need a computer lab. You've got to work like this. If you haven't got a laptop and a fast internet connection, as Ramon said, you're not translating. The students come in with their laptops. You just need a big table and a teacher. Do you recognize the teacher there? It's Ignacio. Without his Dr. House beard. Okay. The teacher walking around, seeing what they're doing, and the students are working in pairs and helping each other. That's a learning space. It's a free learning space. And it doesn't matter if they're doing that for technology, as it happens. He was teaching Trados in that session, but it could have been anything else. Or they're actually doing translations with the technology that's involved. I spend half my working life these days in Monterey in the United States. I teach practice classes. I teach it exactly like that. Do I teach separate skills for technology? Occasionally, yes. You know, we've got to know how to work with Trados and WordFast and Google Translator Toolkit and anything else that's out there. But they're isolated, one-off lessons, so we get those skills, and then the students can translate. And I just insist, use a translation memory, whichever one you like. And if they get into groups, they have to sort out which translation memory they're going to use. If one person's not good in them, the rest of the group trains them in that particular memory. The learning of the technology is part of the actual translation practice. The whole lot is integrated. What they do in the practice class, they translate and talk about translations in the group. Are they picking up technology? Tons of it. But as they go, the one skill that I as a teacher have to pass on to them is, firstly, don't be scared of it, and secondly, how to pick up a new program very quickly. And they get that basic skill, or those two components, very quickly. Now, here's some secrets that you're not allowed to tell anybody who's working as a translation teacher. Firstly, you don't have to come to class to learn anything about technology. Okay, it's all on the web. The tutorials are there, the online tutorials are great. The people developing the programs will help you learn about them, will answer your questions. There are discussion groups for any program you got with any translation memory or MT program you'd like. You don't have to come to class. Don't tell anybody that. But it's all there. What fascinates me is that people do come to class. And in fact, for a while in Tarragona, we had a master's program that just focused on translation technologies. And all these translators would come because what's all this about Trados and how does it work? And oh dear, it costs money and I don't know whether to invest that, etc. All they wanted was to get into a group situation. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, people scared of technology come together, help each other, get someone to hold your hand when you get stuck and talk you through it. You know, a lot of psychological counseling is involved. And they learn in that space. The training systems that we've got, the physical spaces we have, are useful because there is still a lot of fear of technology out there. There's still, although it's reducing as the students get younger, there's still a lot of need for help with this, but it's psychological help. It's not heavy-duty transfer of course contents into heads. I don't think we can work in that kind of educational epistemology anymore. If I imagine stage 5, the one important thing I think that we do have to come to terms with, and this is in the design of entire translation programs, is that the technologies these days, the online MT technologies, allow anyone to translate. With minimal knowledge of the foreign language and lots of knowledge of the area you're working in, people can translate. Non-professional translation, volunteer translation, whatever you want to call it, user-based translation, crowdsourcing, all those terms, volunteer translation is booming. The technologies are facilitating this. You want to do subtitles, you go to .sub and use their online technology, and you can do subtitles. You don't need a teacher. Don't tell anybody that either. Okay. Going to Google Translator Toolkit, I teach that to people. It takes 15 or 20 minutes for them to get the idea, and they're off discovering it by themselves. We're moving towards a world where technologies will enable translation to be a widespread, non-professional activity. And we're paid to produce professionals. And this is the problem we have to come to terms with. That's why the technologies are changing the very nature of intercultural relations, and I think for the better. But it's why we have to rethink what we can do and where we need trained professionals. This model fascinates me. There are many like it. It's from the Centre for Next Generation Localization in Dublin. And what interests me, if that's going to work, is that in this process, this workflow model, you've got machine translation, which then goes out to what they're calling the crowd, but I'm going to call them volunteer specialists. People who know a lot about the area. Typically, for example, Greenpeace. People who work for Greenpeace tend to know a lot about Greenpeace-type topics, okay, or Amnesty. And they're very good people to do the first post-edit of the MT output. And they'll do it for free, encantados. So you've got that crowd translation process, but that is then revised by people over here who need special post-editing skills. And those people there and the people doing the style correction and putting back the product are, I suggest, the people we should be training. We're going to have to accept the fact that a lot of translation is going to be done by non-professionals over here, and that we have to train people in post-editing techniques, in putting packets back together and separating them at the beginning. That is basically project management, okay, and style editing for high-quality products. They haven't got it here, but I would also add, I hope there's a big future for pre-editing, that is for controlled language or pre-editing text for fast automatic translation. But those are new areas in which we should be training people. Are they technology? No. They are the consequences of the technologies that are coming in. That's why that componential model hides what's going on and obscures from us the urgent training needs that are developing. Where do I fit in? Pre-editing, post-editing, style editing. Where do I fit in project management into that particular model? They don't fit in very well. Our mindset is back in stage 3, if we get Ramon's model. Our training needs are in stage 5, the future we have to look towards. Thank you very much.